Hi, I'm Jesse. I'm in my hometown of Greenville, South Carolina, where the Swamp Rabbits are taking on the Jacksonville Icemen, and you're watching Post to Post.
Hello and welcome to Post, the channel where we discuss all things hockey and all teams, and some pretty big news out of the Board of Governors meeting. I think they're happening in Florida, so Gary Bettman's meeting with all the owners. It's just a big shindig of people, and it's interesting because some very important news has come out over the past 2 days. Number one, yesterday, about Seattle. We're going to talk about that a little later, and then today about the salary crap. Some people might think it's the salary crap, the salary cap potential increase. And this is huge news because the projected amount, top end, is, if that happens, it's the highest that the salary cap has jumped in the NHL in the history. And I personally don't believe it'll happen, but we're gonna get into it. So currently the cap is $75 million for each NHL team, and I would say more than half don't spend up to the cap, and we have some who spend just above the floor, I guess, of the cap. I think that's $51 million. So it's interesting when there's a big cap jump, and we're upon one potentially. $75 million to $82 million. That's a $7 million increase. I think the guesstimate, or the low end guesstimate, is probably around 2 or 3, which would still be awesome. We'll bring it up to 78. But if it does get to 82 million, that is huge news for those top end teams, and like Detroit, Chicago, these teams that are really close to the cap, and maybe $7 million. That's Dustin Brown. Breaking news: Dustin Brown's been traded to the Detroit Red Wings. Just kidding, of course. But that's, like Vlasic, who's making, I think, like 6.7. You've got, I think I have some written down here. Seabrook 6.8, Backstrom 6.7, and Nathan McKinnon 6.3. That's another one of all those players. Obviously not specifically, but you can add that caliber of player to your team if the salary cap goes up that much. I'm going to talk about Montreal because I know them the best. Next year, they have Thomas Plekanec's contract ending. I don't believe they're going to re-sign him. He's making $6 million a year. Right now, I think they have around $8 million free. Hypothetically, if next year starts, Carey Price's contract kicks in, so there's an extra $4 million. So 8 minus 4 is 4. But then you get rid of Plekanec's contract, and then so you're back up by 6, you're at 10, and you get a high-end salary cap increase of 7, so you're at 17 million, and then there's some other moving pieces there you need to take care of, but teams like Montreal and other teams could be in a situation where they're in a position to really make a play at a lot of good players and add some big names to their team, and there's a lot of teams out there in that situation, so it's going to be really interesting. And it also means it's not all good news. It's bad news for some of the owners, because when the top end salary cap increases, the low end, the floor, also increases. So those teams like Arizona and Carolina who are at the floor, and that goes from 51 potentially to 58. That means that those teams have to spend more money than they might on planning to spend. So it's not good news for everybody. And also with salary cap, I said it again, salary cap increase comes talk with the CBA, the current CBA, that's the collective bargaining agreement, the NHL and the NHLPA. It's a big issue when that comes up, and the current CBA expires in 2022. But the NHL and the NHLPA both have an opt-out clause in September 2019. So if either the NHL or the NHLPA decides to opt out, that means the CBA would automatically expire in 2020, September or October 2020. I think it's September. And that means that we could be in a lockout situation for the 2020-2021 season. And that sucks because there's a lot that goes into these CBA negotiations. We've got top-end player contract values. We've got player contract extensions, and like the DiPietro situation for 14 years or whatever it was. That was a big issue. So now there's a top end cap on how long you can sign a player. There's the escrow, which is a huge problem, and the players hate escrow. It's a funny, if you don't know what escrow is, it's basically the players pay a percentage of their salary, like I think it's 15.5. So 15.5% of a player's salary goes into a bank account, every player. And at the end of the year, the NHL looks to see how much it made, and then it pays the owners. And there's a 50-50% split between the owners and the players. So if the players are at a certain amount and the owners are less than that after they get paid from the NHL, then the owners take money out of the escrow account to pay themselves, and if there's anything left over, the players get that money back. So there's a 50-50% share there. As an example, in 2015, the players paid in 15.5% of their salaries, and the owners weren't paid even close to enough, so the owners actually got a huge chunk of that escrow, almost the entire thing, and the players only get back 2.05% of what they paid in escrow back to themselves, and that's a pretty huge chunk because that year Shea Weber made $14 million as far as salary and signing bonus and stuff, and he actually lost $1.8 million in escrow that year in the 2014-2015 season. Now, to be honest, I don't really feel too bad because he's making $14 million, so he probably doesn't really care a whole lot about 1.8. But you have to take into consideration it's $1.8 million, and then he pays taxes on the $14 million, so he's probably losing like $3 or $4 million off that, and then he's got other fees and stuff. So he's not making $14 million. He's probably making like 8 or something crazy like that. But it's still a lot of money, but it is frustrating for the players because they have to pay into a system that they don't necessarily agree to, but it is a part of the CBA. It's an important part. I believe before in the last CBA, I think it was 57% players, 43% owners, and then in the new CBA that's currently in the system, it's 50-50. Negotiations for the next CBA could come into place, like I said, if there's an opt-out in 2019 as soon as 2020. So I don't know if that revenue sharing or that split will be 50-50, or maybe the owners will want more, and that's what causes the lockout, is these negotiations and these frustrating back and forth stuff. That it sucks that a game has to become a business in that aspect, but it is what it is, and we just have to deal with it. Unfortunately, we've gone through 2 lockouts in the past 17 years or 15 years, 2005 and then 2012, I think, or 13, I can't remember. But it is frustrating, but it's potentially huge news regardless if the salary cap goes up, because teams are going to be able to spend a little bit more. I bet you the Ottawa Senators or Eugene Melnyk was a little upset that he didn't know this news 3 weeks ago. He probably wouldn't have needed it to trade Turris, but it's just funny, I guess. But anyways, I'd love to know your thoughts down below. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily agree with the salary cap in general, and that's totally fine. This isn't an argument of whether the salary cap is good or bad. I personally think it's a good thing. I don't know if it's a good thing that it raises by that much, because there's a lot that comes with it. But I think it is definitely important that the salary cap raises. When the salary cap raises, it's really good for the NHL as a business and as a sport. So that means it's growing, and with all the new revenue coming in because of the Las Vegas franchise, that's the biggest propellant to why the salary cap is increasing potentially for the next season. Now, on to Seattle. The other news that came out was that there was a bid made, or I think a bid agreement that would be happening out of Seattle to the NHL. The NHL has accepted it. The Board of Governors have accepted it and said, okay, Seattle, you can go ahead and start a ticket drive, and a season ticket drive. And in the NHL's history, there has never been a failed season ticket drive. So, and there's a lot of interest in Seattle for a hockey team, way more interest than there was in Las Vegas. So this can, I don't want to say I'm right, but it pretty much guarantees that there's going to be an NHL team in Seattle. Whether that's an expansion team or a relocation team, I don't know yet. It's looking, honestly, like it's going to be an expansion team at this point, because there's different things that go into relocation, and Gary Bettman doesn't want to relocate anybody, and Carolina is not going anywhere because they just got a new owner as part of their deal that they wouldn't move the Carolina Hurricanes. So the Hurricanes aren't going anywhere. So that leaves the Panthers, and that leaves Arizona, and I'm pretty sure the Panthers aren't going anywhere. Realistically, they're not. They're going to stay in Miami or wherever they're playing, Sunrise. I don't know. But the Arizona Coyotes, if they don't get their arena situation in order, then they could be that relocation team, and it could be 5 years from now. Now we may be in a point where Houston gets an expansion team, and then Seattle gets an expansion team, and then the Arizona Coyotes have to move. That's big for Quebec because they're probably the best option for relocation, and that's great for Canada and the city of Quebec City, because they really want a team. They've been waiting so patiently to get one. The only bad thing about expansion, if an expansion team came to Quebec, it's tough because the fee for Vegas was $500 million US. The fee for Seattle is going to be $650 million. That's like 30% of an increase. If Quebec made a bid for an expansion team, we'll say in 3 years from now, maybe that 650 goes to 800. $800 million is over US, is over $1 billion Canadian. I don't think any ownership group in Canada wouldn't be financially viable for them to make a bid of over $1 billion for an NHL team, a new NHL team in Canada. I just think it's too risky. They probably wouldn't be able to recoup the cost quickly enough to make it smart. So that sucks. I think that looks to be going in the direction where Quebec would get a relocation team versus an expansion team, but that's years down the road. But that's great news for people in Seattle. They're going to get a team, almost guaranteed. And then Houston, there's going to be news out of Houston probably in the next year or so, whether maybe they want to make a bid too. And the arena's not going to be done until 2020, I think at the earliest in Seattle. So maybe for the 2020-21 season or the 21-22 season that the expansion team will come in. We'll have another expansion draft. That'll be exciting. And depending on when Houston comes in, there'll be another expansion draft there if it's an expansion team. So the NHL is really changing. And it's, as a hockey fan, it's exciting, but there's a lot of frustrations that come with it. But we can talk about it, and we can speculate, and we can have fun doing it. That's part of the fun, and that's part of the fun of this channel. I get to make videos for you guys and interact with you guys and hear all your comments and opinions. And I hope you leave some down below in the comments. How do you feel about the salary cap? How do you feel about Seattle? How do you feel about Houston? What about Quebec? Love to know your thoughts. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. There's going to be a video coming tomorrow on the Tkachuk suspension. And I have a new jersey that I'm picking up tonight, and I'll be wearing that in tomorrow's video. Hint, hint. All right, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Hope you guys are having a good day. Hit the subscribe button if you're new. Like this video if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.